Hey guys, welcome back. Thank you very much for joining me. So today, as I mentioned before, we are going to be dealing with propagation with soil. So I also want to start by covering a couple of questions that were asked after the previous video. So first of all, a couple of points about soil propagation. Now you can use really high quality compost, sort of all-purpose, etc. What I will be doing is using sharp sand. Now what this is going to do is allow the plant to stay upright and rigid, but it will also allow the roots to push through and grow. It's not going to have any nutrients in there. It will just make it focus more on root growth rather than the leafy growth on top. So first of all, what I want to do is I want to cover how we can identify a leaf node. I am going to be propagating my fantastic, beautiful Fittonia. It's a nerve plant. It is particularly finicky, I find. I've not really been able to successfully propagate it with water. I've always had real success with soil propagation. So I will go into a bit of detail about how I can find the leaf node and how I do find the leaf node. So as you can see, we've got the Fittonia here, and if I just rotate this around, you've got the top leaf node, which is where we're going to encourage more of the growth to come, and this here is the bottom leaf node. Now that's where we're going to get the roots to come out, that's where the hormones are going to come in that we can change. So I'll give that a quick snip. Now I like to go at a bit of an angle, it helps it to callus over. There are also many other things it does, but I don't really remember it. I just know that it's really good to cut it at a slight angle. So it's important to pick the healthiest looking one. As you can see, I'm hunting around here. I'm trying to find the best looking one to make a cutting from. They are very beautiful, but they do require a lot of water, so putting them in that self-contained little area that we will do in a minute is going to be great. So again, there's the top, there's the bottom, and this time I'll snip a little bit lower just to make sure that the plant itself looks good. So that is how I like to identify the leaf nodes. Specifically, it has to be a stalk with more than one leaf on there typically, and it will have most of the time it will have a little tiny bulb where the leaf will want to come out, so even if the leaf has fallen off at some point, you'll still be able to identify where it was. Either by holding it up to the light, you can sort of see that it's a bit sort of darker there where it's not quite as translucent. So now what we're going to be doing is I'm going to show you how I like to get my cuttings into sand. Okay, so what we're going to do is start with our pots, fill that up with sand fairly to the top, fairly high, so it's easy to access the actual cutting. Using a finger or a pencil, whatever you like, just poke a hole about a knuckle deep. Then what we're going to do is we are going to use our rooting powder or rooting gel. I'm going to use one of each in this experiment. This is the gel one. You can get a branded, you can get a supermarket's own brand. They're all, in my opinion, the same. There are also several home remedies that you can make: cinnamon, honey, vinegar and water among some. It really does promote healthy roots, just like it says there. It has antiseptic properties to stop any sort of diseases from getting into such a small cutting. It will promote root growth, root cell manufacture, and it will stop the green stem cell production in that node there, which will help to get roots a lot quicker. So you'll just cut it off at an angle there. I'm using some scissors to trim my cutting off this time round, just because there is no wrong way to do it. I said last time I like to rip them off, and I do. So we'll trim that off. I leave a nice little bump there which has all the hormones in it, and then what we're going to do is we're going to dip it in and then tap off the excess. Now I was a bit silly here. I did not really tip out a tiny amount, which is the most advisable thing to do, especially with a cutting this small. I thought I could just be clever and dip it in. I consequently got some on the leaf. Now that's not advisable, it will typically burn the leaf, so if that happens, the good thing about the powder is you can just blow off the excess, as I have just done there. And as you can see, I've tapped off the excess on the actual stalk, and that's a nice sizable amount there. Now just try and push it right into where it's going to go so that you don't tap off any of the powder as you're putting it into the pot. That's why I made my hole quite large. So now I'll use the gel just so you can see there is no real difference. I don't believe there's going to be any difference in the speed that these cuttings will take either. I'll have them in the same environment. So what I'm going to do now is just give that a quick snip at an angle. Just like before, we'll trim off the actual bottom leaves, and then we're going to get our rooting gel this time. It's a lot easier, I find, to dip it into the gel because you can just tilt it at an angle and you're not sort of risking having all the gel fall out like you would with the powder, because it's quite compact. So I'll pop that in, and again I'll still tap off the excess here. Ooh, there we go. Still tap off the excess there. Normally, not this time apparently, that's no problem. So then we'll pop that in, and then what I like to do is just water it in just to make sure everything's nice and compact around the plant. There are my, as an example, I do use freezer bags. So there are my freezer bags. We'll water that in, then I'll take a freezer bag, I will open it out, put the plants in, blow it up, and I will tie a knot in the top and put it in a place without any direct sunlight, but a lot of indirect sunlight, so it can sort of take its time, grow those roots in its own time. If I do want to check to see if the roots have developed, what I'll do is I will gently take the little cutting and I will gently tug on it just to see if there's any resistance. If there's resistance, that means that there is root growth going on because it's gotten tangled in the sand. If there's not, then it just means it's not quite there yet. Unless the plant itself looks dead, I'm not really going to worry at all. So now I'll blow these up, and that is literally all it is to do a little cutting and to make more babies. So now what I'm going to be doing is just showing you another example with another plant. It's going to be the Philodendron, just like last time. It's just one cutting because I can put multiple plants in this, and it's going to take, it won't take too much room. I've got a larger pot just because it is a larger plant, and the roots tend to get a lot thicker and longer. So because I'm putting more than one cutting in this pot, I'm going to make it a lot larger. So here is the leaf node. As you can see, the remains of the aerial roots there. There's another one for you, didn't really focus. We'll go along and cut our first little bit off, which is unnecessary, we won't need that at the moment. So I'll cut that at an angle and cut the bottom leaf off, and then we just cut the top off there where the plant's going to come out. And I'll just keep doing that along the whole vine, and that will determine how many plants I get. So I could do this in individual pots if I wanted to, but I find it's much easier to keep track of if I just pop them in the same pot anyway, because they're going to end up being multiple cuttings or multiple little plants in one pot to make it look really full. Now the good thing about the Philodendron is it is so forgiving, so it is one of the most convenient plants I find to propagate from. It's incredibly useful to be able to experiment on such a easy plant which can tolerate so many different climates as well. I've got one in most rooms of my house. So all I'll do now is I will get my rooting gel, dip it in, tap off the excess, and then literally just pop it in the hole that it's going to live in until it grows some roots. Now once the roots do develop, you will need to move your plants from sand to soil if you do use the sand method, because there's no nutrients. There's only so long the plant's going to be able to survive in that sort of an environment, unless it's a carnivorous plant which would thrive on that kind of an environment. So you'll just fill in the holes there and make sure it's nice and tightly compacted. One more time, we'll just water it over and put it in a plastic bag, same as the Fittonias, even though it's a slightly larger plant. We just want to give it its own humidity and environment. It'll also prevent any pests from coming in, so it will stop them from attacking your plant while it's very, very weak. And there it is. So those are my two different plants now in cuttings. Hopefully they will root, and I will certainly make a video to check back on them as well. So that is a couple of examples of how I root cuttings in sand. You can, as I said, use soil if you want to. It's really up to yourself. I am trying this out as a new venture. I have previously used soil, but I found it quite hit and miss, and I've recently sort of read up on this, and I found that might be the root of my bias against rooting in soil. So There are a couple of pros because you've got it in that enclosed space. There's not going to be any pests coming. The plants do have that rigid sort of setup where they can comfortably grow roots, and of course you have got the idea you'll still need to transplant it into soil if you're using sand. If not, you've pretty much got your plant ready to go. So let me know what you think. If so far you've tried any of them, let me see what you can do. I'll definitely do an episode next on potting my water propagated plants into soil, how I go through that, sort of the basics, and let me know what else you'd like to see. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.